Welcome to the tutorial for creating the Be Mine handbag. This stylish and versatile bag is designed with both form and function in mind. It features exposed edges for a modern touch, customizable handles, and options for closure like magnetic clasps. The design also includes beautiful quilting-inspired stitching, adding texture and elegance to the bag. For those who love adding a personal touch, there is an optional keychain detail that you can include to make your bag even more unique. Before we dive into the step-by-step process, let's go over the materials you'll need to create your project. First, the main fabric. Since the edges of the bag are exposed and the design is unlined, it's important to choose non-fraying and sturdy materials that will hold their shape while maintaining a clean finish. In the handbook that comes with the patterns, you will find a list of suggested fabrics along with the estimated amount that you need to create this project. Just for a reference, for this sample, I will be working with heavy felt, which is 1/8 of an inch thick. 1 inch swivel snap hooks, 2 units, 1 inch adjustable strap buckle, 1 inch D-rings for bags. We are going to need also 2 units, and 1 magnetic purse snap for the closure. Your preferred method to transfer the quilting-inspired stitching designs onto the fabric. For this sample, I'm going to be using water-soluble paper, which is commonly used on embroideries. Choose a thread that complements the thickness of your fabric. Use the right needle size based on the thickness of your fabric. For medium to heavy fabrics, a size 14 or 16 needle is recommended to ensure smooth stitching without skipping or breaking. And the pattern, which is available below in the description box. It includes a pattern grid for the quilting-inspired technique and offers 2 different styles variation. A bag with a flap for a polished design or without the flap for a simpler and minimalist approach. It also includes different styles to create optional keychain details, allowing you to personalize your bag even further. Pre-shrink your fabric before starting the project. Once ready, lay the fabric flat on a smooth surface and place your pattern on top. Take into consideration that some pieces will need to be cut twice, but for a cleaner and more precise cuts, I highly recommend to cut one piece at a time rather than placing the patterns on the fold. Follow the grain line when placing your patterns. In my case, felt does not have a grain line to worry about, but for woven materials, ensure you align the grain line properly for the best fit and durability. Use weight to hold the pattern securely in place. Since the seam allowance is already included in the pattern, so simple cut the pieces following the edges of the pattern. Take your time to ensure clean, neat edges, as this will be exposed in the finished design. You will see that the long strap piece is recommended to be cut and fold on the pattern. This is because I was trying to save paper and space on the pattern layout. However, if you are working with thicker fabrics, avoid placing it on fold. Instead, use the pattern piece as a template and place it on top of the fabric. Draw around the piece and then reflect the pattern onto the fabric to create the strap with the original length. Now let's transfer the pattern grid into the fabric. To do so, I'm using the water-soluble paper, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to place my film, my paper on top of my pattern grid, and I'm going to transfer it using preferably fabric-safe pen or pencil, and I'm just going to trace all the lines. Once my pattern is completely transferred, I'm going to place it on top of the fabric and I'm going to secure it in place using pins or quilting clips. Following the grid carefully, stitch each line from start to finish until the entire pattern is completed. Backstitch at the beginning and end of each line to secure the threads, and make sure that you test your stitching on a fabric scrap to check thread tension and stitch length before you start. In that case, if you need to make any adjustments, it's the right time to do it so you can prevent puckering or uneven stitches. As you can see, I'm using some kind of quilting presser foot. However, since these patterns are just straight lines, this is not something that you need. This kind of presser foot is more helpful when you are doing freehand motion because it allows you to move the fabric in any direction. But for this kind of pattern, it's not needed. Then I'm going to trim all my loose threads and I'm going to remove the pattern grid by rinsing the fabric with water. As you can see here, you can incorporate the quilting inspired stitching in all the layers or just some of them. But keep into consideration that it's important to verify the size of the fabric layers, as quilting can cause the fabric to shrink. Check that the quilted layer matches the intended dimensions of your pattern pieces. Especially if the quilting is not incorporated into all pieces, the layers might not align later. If any excess fabrics remains, carefully trim it to ensure all pieces match perfectly when we are assembling. Fold the short handle in half, wrong sides facing each other, and sew along the edge, using 1/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Stop stitching 2.5 inches before reaching each end, leaving the edges open for the next step. During the sewing process, I will be using double-side tape to temporarily hold pieces in place. This technique is often used when working with leather materials because it helps secure the fabric without the need for pins. So I'm going to add 2 pieces of double-side tape to the base of my short handles, exactly where the space was left open. Then place the short handle on top of the base pieces in the position indicated by the placement marks on the pattern. Make sure the right side of the base panel is facing up. And then sew the handle in place by edge stitching along the base following a rectangular shape. The recommended size for the stitching rectangle is 1 3/8 of an inch by 1 1/8 of an inch. Since the handles typically face significant stress in daily use, secure the stitches as firmly as possible and make sure you reinforce the handles in place by following the stitching diagram provided in the patterns. Repeat the same procedure in both handles. Now install the female part of the magnetic snap on the front side of the back base panel. To do this, make 2 small slits where the legs of the snap will be inserted. Refer to the pattern for the suggested position. And once the legs are inserted through the fabric, fold them outward to secure the closure firmly in place. With the right side up, place the flat piece on the back base panel, aligning it according to the pattern placement marks. Then, edge stitch the flap to the back base panel, leaving the edges exposed for a clean and modern finish. You can skip this step if you decide to make your bag without the flap and closure. Now install the male part of the magnetic snap on the flap using the additional rectangle piece. Take the male part and insert it into the rectangle closure piece. Use a seam ripper or scissors to make a small slit in the rectangle piece, just large enough to insert the base of the snap. Once inserted, use your fingers to open the legs of the snap and secure it in place, as we did before with the female part. With right side up, place the rectangle piece to the wrong side of the flap, following the placement suggested in the pattern. Then edge stitch around the whole piece using 1/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Now let's attach the included D-ring cover piece on the side panel pattern. To do so, position the cover on the suggested placement as indicated in the pattern, and begin by sewing the bottom edge of the cover, edge stitching around it following a rectangular shape. Ensure that the rectangular stitching has around half an inch height and is strong enough to handle the weight and stress that the straps are going to create. Then insert the open edge of the ring cover through the ring piece and edge stitch the open edge. Follow a rectangular shape and sew as close as the ring as possible without it interfering with your stitching. And don't forget to repeat the same procedure in both sides of the panel. Mark the center of the base and side panels, and with wrong sides facing, align the centers and edges of the pieces. Take into consideration if you added decorative quilting stitches to the base panel but not to the side panel, there may be a slightly size discrepancy, let's say around 1/4 of an inch, due to the shrinkage that is caused by the stitching. If you find any difference in between the pieces, trim the excess at the ends to ensure a proper fit. When you start assembling the bag, always start by aligning the center of the pieces first and then work your way towards the ends. Use clips to hold the pieces together, and for more control, I strongly recommend to baste along the edges before sewing to ensure the pieces stay aligned during the stitching. Then edge stitch the pieces together, approximately 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Keep in mind that the side panel will naturally round around the corners, while the base panel will have sharp corners. Follow the curve of the side piece or the side panel while sewing, and then trim the sharp corners of the base piece to match the curve, following the pattern shape. Now you can remove your basting stitching and trim any loose threads. For sure, this will be the most challenging part of the pattern, as handling the bag in the machine becomes more difficult as it starts taking shape. Be patient, ensure you are using the right needle size, and take your time. But if you find it too complicated to finish the bag by machine, because the thickness of the fabric or the strength of your machine, you can absolutely complete it by hand. So for that reason, I would like to take a quick moment to go over how to make the blanket stitch, in case you want or need to sew the edges of your bag by hand. We're going to start by marking the seam allowance on the edge of the fabric. Our seam allowance will be 1/8 of an inch, and this will act as your guide for where the stitch will sit. Next, we're going to mark the distance between the stitches. Use a spacing tool or a ruler. In my case, I'm using a pricking iron, which is a commonly used leather working tool. So in this way, I can evenly mark the distance between each stitch. I know that these first two steps might seem like an extra preparation that probably is not needed, but I feel that they are really helpful for maintaining consistency and achieving neat and even stitches. Especially if you're a beginner, this approach will make the stitching process much easier. Use a thread that matches the thickness of your fabric. A strong thread such as wax thread or heavy-duty polyester are recommended. However, embroidery thread can be also used to get a more decorative stitch. For this project, I would recommend to use the color of the thread that matches the color of your fabric. However, for the purpose of this sample, I'm going to be using contrasting thread so you can visualize it better. Next, thread your needle and tie a secure knot at one end to prevent the thread from slipping through the fabric. Then insert your needle through just the top layer of fabric to hide the knot between the layers. Then insert the needle through the fabric from the back to the front at the same point where we just did our first stitch. Then pull the thread through, leaving a small loop on the edge of the fabric, and pass the needle through the loop. Then pull the thread tight and secure the stitch. Then insert the needle again from the back to the front, but this time at the next marked point. Once we inserted the needle, pull the thread through, leave a small loop on the edge of the fabric and pass the needle through the loop and then pull the thread tight. Repeat the same procedure moving along the edge of the fabric and following your marked points. When you reach the end, tie off the thread securely and try to hide it in between the layers as we did at the beginning of the stitch. And then just trim any excess. You can adjust the spacing between the stitches and the thickness of the thread, such as by using double thread to customize the look of your blanket stitch, and from there choose your preferred alternative. Now let's get our strap done. To do so, let's install first the adjustable strap buckle. So thread one end of the strap through the adjustable buckle and sew the fold down to secure it. Then, on the other end of the strap, insert the swivel clasp by threading the thread through the clasp loop. Then fold the strap end over the buckle and pull the strap through to secure it in place. Then insert the second swivel clasp by threading the strap through the clasp loop and fold the strap end again. Then secure the fold in place with a few stitches. Now you can insert or clip the strap into the D-rings. There are several ways to finish the keychain, including using snaps, grommets, or the keychain holder piece that is included in the patterns, which is the one that I will be demonstrating for this sample. To do so, start by placing both fabric pieces together with the wrong side facing, and insert the keychain holder piece folded as well between the layers at the marked place. Since we're working with thicker fabrics, the area could become too bulky. If this happens, insert only one edge of the keychain holder between the layers and leave the other end outside the fabric to secure it later. Sew along the edges using 1/8 of an inch of seam allowance to secure the layers, ensuring the keychain holder is encased. In the case you inserted only one edge, now fold the keychain holder fabric piece over the back of the keychain and secure it in place by stitching along the previous seam. This step can also be done by hand if needed. To finish the keychain, you can insert your preferred material, ribbon, cord, chain, or the key holder strap included in the patterns. Since the fabric is sturdy enough, I just got one layer for the strap, but you can make it double if you prefer. Simply insert the piece into the holder and tie a nice knot to secure it in place. You can also shorten the piece based on your personal preference for a customized look. And that's it. The Be Mine handbag is now complete. I hope you have fun making it and enjoy the process as much as I did. Thank you for following along with this tutorial, and please don't forget to share your finished project and tag me so I can see your beautiful creations. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to help. And with this being said, I will see you pretty soon in the next tutorial. Happy sewing!